Welcome back to another exciting episode of TCB Garage. Have you missed our Mustang as much as we have? I know I have. I've been getting pretty tired of working on this old boat. I love this old boat, but that fiberglass work is getting old. So I figured I'd break up the pattern here with a little bit of a Mustang project. I'm not quite sure how easy this is to tell over video, but there's a bit of a surge at idle. So we have a vacuum leak, and I found the vacuum leak kind of a long time ago, and I bought a solution for the problem. I found the leak. I've actually had it since I installed this carburetor brand new. And I'm going to have you guys follow along as I fix it. It kind of comes and goes. You can idle it up and kind of get it fattened up a little bit and it goes away. And as much as we've loved the ease of use and tunability of this little Summit carburetor, it's had a vacuum leak on this throttle shaft since the day I installed it brand new. So I came up with, I think, is what the best solution for the problem is, and that's to install a Holley. So let's get this old one off and get that new Holley put on. Yeah, if you can't notice the surge from out here on video, look at the tack. Yeah, that's a vacuum leak. Watch this, everybody. I'll show you our little diagnosis. It'd be kind of hard to tell, but there it is. Well, let's take a look at what I chose to replace the Summit carb with. Ooh, easy there, carburetor hat, trying to get away. Okay, I went with this Holley 650. It's all wrapped up nice and airtight to keep the bugs out, keep the dirt out, keep the fiberglass dust out. This beauty right here, 650 vacuum secondary. It's gorgeous. I've always wanted one of these on here. I've always wanted one that had this style bowl. For whatever that's worth, I just always wanted one. So we're just gonna plop this right back on there, right on there for the first time. So first we have to take that one off and make sure we have all of our necessary gaskets and spacers and all the fun stuff like that. Okay, I'll apologize in advance if the views you get aren't the absolute best. I'll try to explain my way through all that. Months and months ago, I bought this Holley 650 carburetor to replace this Summit carburetor to fix my vacuum leak and to make it look cooler in the process. There's no reason in simply fixing a problem and not making you like your car more. And it might even perform better, I don't know. This car really performs pretty good. But I'm going to help also walk you through all my tuning process. And where a lot of this gets really fun is I ordered this a long time ago. And I want to say I ordered parts to make my fuel line up to this hard line that I built, and everything I needed to make this thing bolt right on. But I did that so long ago, I don't even know what I bought or where I put it. So we're gonna need to get through all that stuff together. I'm gonna pull these here C-clips off to get that off. Got my fun return springs, return spring brackets. Got a vacuum line running into my vacuum gauge. I need to get a little fork tool and pocket screwdriver. Pop these E-clips off, stick them safely right over there. A little forky tool here. Pop off my manifold vacuum line there. I always like to make sure everything is disconnected from the carburetor before I unbolt the base plate of the carburetor. I'm not wrestling that. And I think we're there. So let's unbolt the carburetor. Man, I've been putting this off. And frankly, this thing runs so good that I haven't wanted to mess with this and screw it up, even though there is a vacuum leak. But the truth is, I believe it will run better with the Holley on it. Man, that magnet is completely gone. The screwdriver is probably 25 years old. The magnet's dead in it. I guess we're going to reuse the same phenolic spacer I've had on here for every bit of a decade. I don't think it's warped or leaking. It's a little fuel soaked. That's just kind of like a power valve system. A little extra fuel when you need it. Just obviously kidding. If it's not too obvious. Pull all the little nuts out that hold it together. Let's see if I actually got it all off or not. Boop! All off. Pop that on. Okay, come on. Go on there, gasket. Okay, pop that on. Let's take a look at our new and improved, beautiful situation here. And that is pretty. I love that. Does it go all the way down? Because it's going to have to. I'm a little curious as to what, if it's not the heater line, what's hanging me up. That's all it can be. Okay. Yeah, I think it's just my heater line. Okay, push that out of the way. We're good. Well, it already looks super cool. Wow, that's nice. That line is not tight. I need an adapter for that, which I'm sure I bought that. Just pretty certain. You need to tighten all these things down though, unless that just is supposed to rotate, which maybe it is. So I should have a piece of hardware to go down here between these lines. All right, well, after a quick trip to the parts store, we have some adapters. We're going from half 20 SAE or inverted flare to an adapter, or it goes to pipe thread to 3/8 pipe thread, which is what we need for our Russell fuel line here. So after getting all my line wrenches out. Adjustable wrenches. Go ahead and pull the carburetor off. Reluctantly set that right up there. Thread all these in. You don't want to use Teflon with fuel. You just need to trust your pipe thread stuff to work. So we'll obviously check all this stuff for leaks once we get it all tightened down. And then hope and pray that it gets us where we want to go. Having to use 2 adapters instead of 1, which really isn't as pretty. Not what I originally wanted or thought I was going to end up needing to do. But it's where we are. Set all this stuff down in here, hopefully not too much in a bind. It's important for all this stuff to line up and not be in a bind. See if we need to move anything around or bend our fuel line a little bit. It looks like we might need to, just a hair. Tighten down my inverted flare and into my inverted flare. Carburetor not in a bind. Fuel line's not rubbing anything. Okay, now we can go ahead and put all of our nuts to reattach the carburetor. We hadn't gotten into the fun stuff yet. Getting to hear it run and tune it out, all that fun stuff. Oh, we'll get all this stuff in. Probably should have already checked our secondary opening spring, but we haven't yet. Probably switch it to the one I had in the Summit carb. One pro of having the Summit carb is it has a lot of Holley service parts. So Holley, I already have a Holley jet kit, even though I shouldn't need to rejet this carburetor. But if I do, I'll be able to. Everything just bolts right in the way it ought to. Go ahead and get a deeper socket. Find out how well a regular depth gasket is going to work for this base plate instead of that big thick gasket as far as cooling goes. We're more dependent on our phenolic spacer now that we don't have that thick gasket. Okay, carb's bolted down, fuel line's all zipped in together. Some of our springs are installed. All of our springs are installed. Put our little E-clips back here on the fuel, on the throttle rod unit. You use some tiny pliers for that. There's one, and we had 2 on here, so we're gonna just put 2 back without putting our gloves on there too. Okay, we should be set to jet. We need to fire it up now. See what it does. Then we can start tuning. After we take all of our wrenches off the radiator. Let's just take them off the car. Put them right down there. See if we have any open vacuum ports. Shouldn't. We're going to put our gauge on that one though. You don't have to use a vacuum gauge to tune your carburetor. You can do it by sound. I know a lot of people that say that's not possible, but you're more or less, you're just looking for the highest RPM. The highest RPM is the highest vacuum. Now that the carburetor's on and this is difficult to get to, we need to get to it. We also need to plug back in our electric choke, which we're going to adjust before we start it. But we want to use manifold vacuum instead of metered vacuum. In fact, I've never had any reason to use anything but manifold vacuum. Got our tube on there. Get this up safely out of the way. Put our vacuum cap on the back of our pocket screwdriver we're going to tune with. All right, I think now we're ready to start it up. I say start it up, I mean pump fuel into it, but honestly not until I lean out my choke adjustment. I don't know anyone who needs their choke adjustment to be as rich as these are always set. We're going to lean this way out with at least 2 screwdrivers. Can't imagine how fat this thing would run on cold starts if you left this alone. We're going to leave those kind of loose for now because we're probably going to be adjusting on it some more. But that'll get us started. Okay. Now we need to continue cranking to pump fuel all up into these bowls.
What I'm doing now is leaning out the choke circuit, which you do that by twisting that little black cylinder clockwise, which it is labeled on the carburetor too.
Sounds good. But our float bowl adjustments are too low. I can't even see the fuel in them. So we're going to raise those up.
The floats were actually set too high. What I was seeing through the sight window was solid fuel with no air, as to where I was originally thinking it was only air. Now that I've become more familiar with this style carburetor, I learned that when you do see all fuel,
way too high,
you also see the float. So the float will be there, and that'll be kind of an indicator that you're too high. Another good thing to add here is to set your float height. Think about a right-hand thread screw. When you screw it out or to the left or counterclockwise, that moves the float up. And when you screw it the opposite way, clockwise or down, that lowers the float. And the nut you see me loosening and tightening simply locks in your float height position once you get it set right.
Still too high. Might have been too high to begin with.
What you see me doing here is discovering that the rear needle and seat is now leaking from me adjusting the float height. So I figure out that I need to shut the car off, remove the needle and seat assembly, and replace the gaskets on it so that then I can get back to adjusting it and move forward with the project.
That's about as leaky as you can get one to be. That gasket looks like shit. I didn't crank it down that tight. That gasket looks terrible. Oh, it's torn in half. Okay, cool. Perfect. It ran really good when I first started it up, but those weren't right. See how much we love this thing. Okay, let's see where we are now.
If you're wondering what I'm doing now, I'm looking at the sight glass windows on the side of the carburetor to check my float height.
Steady vacuum, no vacuum leaks. That's a plus. Our bowl level is dropping now since we've changed our float height. We can get it all nice and warmed up, then we can set our idle mixture screws.
Put your eyes on my upper radiator hose. You'll see that it starts to steam here. That's the thermostat opening, so that hose is now hot and the radiator's getting hot. And the steam is, I believe, some spilt coolant from like the day or two before where I topped it off. But this is kind of important to indicate because it's showing that the engine's warming up to the point to where we can actually start to tune the idle mixture screws.
Sounds pretty good, as is though, really. But we're still going to adjust it. Quarter turn in.
At this point, I start adjusting the idle mixture screws. I turn each one of them in a quarter turn as I watch the vacuum gauge to see if it raises or drops. It dropped the tiniest little bit, and then I eventually back them out a half turn from that position, which would be a quarter turn from the original position, and it dropped back down about the same as what it did when it was a quarter turn in from the starting point. So I went back to the starting point, and that was the sweet spot. It was exactly where they needed to be to have optimum vacuum. Which optimum vacuum is the highest vacuum or highest RPM. Here what I'm doing is setting the idle speed, and I keep walking back and forth to look at the tach because I'm really particular about having it exactly at the number I want, which I want to say at the time I was setting it to, I believe, 750 RPM.
Warmed up idle down to about 750. Man. That tuned out so quick that the idle mixture screws were in the right place to begin with, which is incredible. The float heights were high. I brought those down. I had to replace the gasket underneath that nut twice. Haven't replaced that one yet, but I probably should, considering how bad that one died and how quickly. And I need to keep checking my lines down here that appear to be leaking. Well, for our fuel line adapters that are brass, we're going to use the yellow Teflon tape. It's supposed to be resistant to gas. I'm not used to using any kind of a sealant tape when it comes to fuel, but we're going to use this here and see how it goes. I'm going to wrap that the other way though, like that. On the little tape thing, it says do at least 2 full reps. That'd be 1. And 2. There's 1. And then 2. Pull that tight, tear it off. I still did that backwards. Although if you get it on there nice and tight, it doesn't really matter. I don't think. Backwards on both of them? Probably. Zip all this stuff together. Check out our new Holley 650 vacuum secondary under $289. It's so pretty it makes everything else look bad. We tuned it out, which didn't really require very much. Even the idle mixture screws were in the right place. We test drove it, everything seemed wonderful.
Here I take the car out for a drive, which everything appears to be working fine, and a lot of what I'm looking for here is, does it take throttle well without hesitation? If you're at a cruising speed, is it smooth and does it not have a surge? And everything feels great. I believe we have the right power valve, I believe that we have the right main jets. You want to do this along with checking your spark plugs after a certain driving condition, like after you're cruising RPM, you can just shut the key off and get out and check a spark plug, or check all of them if you want to be super thorough, and see how it looks. If it looks the way you want it to, which reading spark plugs is a whole nother video's worth of information, but that is what you need to know from a test drive. So this is how mine went, and it went great. Our car is happy and reliable and no longer has a vacuum leak. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for subscribing. We will catch you on the next video.